Who is the coolest dad on the planet? We're breaking down Fatherly's top 8 in this episode of Dad Chat.
Just want to finish these chats with Dad. Dad, I just want to chat with you some more.
Welcome to another episode of Dad Chat.
Dad stuff, okay?
For everything dads need to know about business, life, news, and doing everything they need to do to take over the world.
Take over the world.
And still get home in time for dinner.
Time for dinner, sweetie.
With your hosts, Greg Roulette and Matthew Goldfarb.
Welcome back to Dad Chat. We're doing some dad chatting today about the coolest dads of 2019. And this is kind of a special episode. I saw Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson post about this on his feed. And I immediately tagged Matt in the comments and said, we need to talk about this on Dad Chat because there's some interesting folks on this list. It's a list that was put together by fatherly.com, a big website in the dad and father space. And so what we wanted to do in this episode is go through their top 8, the coolest of the coolest dads of 2019. Sadly, Matthew, you and I did not make the list this year, but now we have a list to shoot for. Like this is now on my vision board, if you will. Like we need to make the Fatherly coolest dads of maybe 2025, if you will.
Yeah, that gives us some time, it gives us some time to get our act together and get out there more before we make the list. Although there are some questionable people on here, which I know we're going to get to.
Oh, without a doubt. So what I would love for you guys to do is I want you to play along. So one thing, is share your own commentary about the top 8 that we're going to go through today. Share who should have made this list but didn't. Who are the coolest of the cool dads, whether they're actors, entertainers, athletes, if they're in arts and politics, whatever it is. If you know a cool dad who should be on this list, tag us, let us know, because there are a lot of cool dads on this list, but I'm sure there are a lot that are not on this list. And we want you guys to play along and see if you agree, not just with us, but with the article. So without further ado, Matthew, let's go into their top 8. So this is the 8. This is top 8. This is kind of the coolest of the cool. So they also have categories that we might get to later, depending on how much time we have. But these are the coolest dads, the coolest of the cool. Number 8, drum roll, is Lego Batman. What the hell is Lego Batman even doing on this list? So I've seen this movie probably 100 times with my kids. He is the worst dad of all time. A, he adopts a kid and doesn't even know it's his kid. He's just distracted. B, he's an egomaniac and it's all about him. C, he, ditches his friends and his son like halfway through. Like he's the worst dad ever. Why is he even on this list?
Yeah, I'm going to just say this, chalking up to trying to be quirky and funny. But yeah, like between the Lego movie and the Lego Batman movie, he's a terrible dad. He puts his kid into dangerous situations. He basically adopts a kid without even paying attention to it. It's funny as hell, but it's like, dude, this guy is not, the coolest dad. I mean, other than maybe, being the son of a billionaire, that would be kind of cool. But this guy is he's a mess. And I don't really know what they were thinking other than I think they're just trying to be funny.
Yeah, man, I think you're right. I think the writer was just trying to add some kind of smart ass, comical response. But, I think there are just so many better, even adding in Groot from the Minions. He's a better dad than Lego Batman. Adding in Mr. Incredible from The Incredibles. He's a better dad than Batman. So if you're going to go animated, at least pick a dad who, at least Groot from, the Minions, he went from evil, from a villain to a hero to now helping people and raising 3 daughters on his own, a single dad, such a cooler story. I don't know about you, man, but I think there's so many better cartoon dads than Lego Batman.
I thought when you said Groot, you were talking about Rocket and Groot from Avengers Endgame.
So it's Groot, not Groot. Yeah, so bad pronunciation.
But apparently, they said that when in Avengers Infinity War, when Groot, and this is a spoiler, and if you haven't seen Infinity War, well, you're on your own at this point. But he basically, as he was disintegrating, and he goes, "I am Groot," that they said he was saying to Rocket, "Dad." So even that, was a better relationship than Lego Batman.
So we got Lego Batman at number 8 of the coolest of the cool. So I think you guys already know where this article is headed. Number 7 on their list is the man who thinks he is the second coming of Jesus, and he calls himself Yeezus, Kanye West. Is he a good dad?
Dude, I don't know. He's just batshit crazy. And personally, like I think I saw yesterday that he said that Democrats are brainwashing black people into supporting all these liberal causes, and Donald Trump is, the most brilliant politician and savior of our American political system of all time. And I don't know where anyone falls on the spectrum, but I don't know, man. I think it's got to be a crazy life living in this household. Just based on even what he's been saying lately about how his wife's dressing, that she dresses too sexy and all these things he's trying to change. I don't know if this is a batshit place to grow up, even if you are a multimillionaire and a father who's an egomaniac. I feel like it would be all about him. I don't know if that would not necessarily be how I would want to raise my kids, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, and just the constant back and forth of, going crazy, the mental health issues, the born again Christian side. He just released that album, Jesus is King, that whole side. But then he's also on the other side, married to a Kardashian who flaunts her, her abilities, if you will, to help make dollars for the family. You have a $1 billion shoe company, of which I'm actually wearing his shoes right now. So I'm supporting.
Of course you are.
Of course I am, right? I picked a good day to wear those. And, and then you just have this culture that, he's rocking the MAGA hats and he's going off. And you have these young people who are still, one of them, paying a lot of money for his shoes and for his clothes and for what he's doing. And he's got this artistic side of him that is freaking brilliant. And he's got this mental side of himself that is just crazy. And you're right, like being in that household, in a Kardashian Jenner household, that can't be a normal place to grow up. Like you are just not getting a normal childhood living in that household. Even if Kanye wasn't crazy, just living in a household where there's TV cameras everywhere, where you are the center of attention, you can't get out of your heart. Like, I don't know, man. I'm not saying that he's a bad dad. I'm just saying that growing up in that environment is gotta be surreal and is doing a mental job to those kids that when they get older, how are they going to react or enter the world? Or, they've had a camera in their face since the day they were born. Like it's a weird thing.
I don't know if you can have just like a normal life or normal interaction when you feel like you're being watched at all times. I mean, it's like whenever I go on stage or if I ever get filmed for an interview, like I'm like very conscious, right? You're aware of like how you're looking and the facial reactions you're making and your body language. I don't know. I mean, in a reality TV world, maybe you just get used to it, but it's like I don't think you can just have a normal childhood. And, that's why you see a lot of kids who are the children of famous actors, like they're all screwed up because they don't have just normal boundaries. They don't have normal rules. And like, when your parents just have millions and millions of dollars and rent their own jetliners and all this stuff, I don't know. I don't know what is, constitutes a healthy existence in that standpoint, but I don't know. Cool. He's cool. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Does that make him the best dad? I don't know, but it's definitely not a normal existence, I think, for any kid. And
we should run a poll on social media this week. And I think it's, would you let your kids go on to like a play date with Kanye's kids and just see what some of the feedback is? Like, would you let your kids go on a play date with Kanye's kids and just see the reactions that people, because I'm sure people will be like, heck yeah, like it's probably a ball, like everybody probably gets like gold plated, M&Ms, on that play date. But, so I think that'd be just a really fun social experiment to try out.
Let's do it. I'll call those people, see if they can set that up for us.
Exactly. All right. So we got Lego Batman. We got Kanye coming in at number 6. This is probably the first sensible choice. You got Mr. Chris Pratt. And I actually think this is a pretty good choice. Look, if you're a kid growing up and your dad is Star-Lord, he's a Jurassic Park character, and he's a Lego, man, that's a really cool dad. I'll tell you, like that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, and when you're older, you find out your dad was also Andy Dwyer from Parks and Rec.
Winning.
Yeah, this dude, I've had an interesting relationship with Chris Pratt, not personally, but in terms of my emotional experience with him. So I was watching Parks and Rec, and I always thought the dude was super funny, and he was just like this chubby, kind of like silly, goofy guy. And then all of a sudden, he started turning into this movie star, and he did like, I think it was not Black Hawk Down. It was something. It was a movie about kind of the people who went after Bin Laden. I forgot what it was, but he suddenly went from this like chubby guy to like Mr. Ripped, and then suddenly started doing all of these big movies. And it was very surreal because a lot of times you think, all right, if somebody's like a chubby funny guy and they get ripped, they can't be funny anymore. And this dude's definitely kept it up, and he's definitely an interesting guy. And he does strike me as someone who would be a super fun, cool dad. And also, like, what I really like are celebs are people who, you know, they struggle a little bit, they get famous, they don't turn into total jackasses. Now, there's some people who think that, you know, he's gotten a little too churchy and he's gotten very kind of religious, but he's definitely a cool dad. Like, this is one, like, I think you would be proud to be like, yeah, that's my dad. And to own like a Lego figurine of your dad is pretty damn cool.
It's really cool. So he's also a single dad. He's newly engaged, but Anna Faris is who he has his son Jack with. So, you know, he's on the single dad side. And in one of the articles that it links to, they ask him what his favorite thing to do with his son Jack is when you're there. And he says, fishing. We have a lake loaded with bass, so we fish. He's a great little fisherman. We caught a lot of fish. I mean, dude's a good dad, man. I like this choice. Probably the first sensible, cool dad choice on this list, which brings us to number 5. We got Anthony Anderson. And I will say that his show Blackish is hilarious. It is like very, very real. It is very good. And he plays a great father figure on that show. And he does it in real life as well. So again, I think this is probably a pretty good choice here for a cool dad.
So it's interesting reading, you know, the article about him and kind of juxtapositioning it against Kanye are like night and day. Because the one thing he talks about in the article is that he keeps his kids normal. He keeps them grounded. And he has this whole thing about how when I think his daughter was 6, she thought that they were all rich and could do whatever they wanted. And like they went on a flight and he intentionally had them flight coach and had them be with their grandmother. And like, you wanted food, you get off your butt and go do it. And really trying to keep his kids grounded, and also letting them know, like, look, we have this fantasy life. This is not reality. And the reality is being grounded and giving back and doing work with the homeless and whatnot. This dude's awesome. And he's funny as hell, too. Was he in Friday?
I don't know if he was in Friday. He might have been, man. He's been in a lot of stuff.
I feel like he was the guy who tried to steal the ATM machine. I don't know if it's a different movie, but like they do this whole thing to steal an ATM machine, and they finally steal the ATM machine, and then it's a brand new ATM machine, so there's no money in it, and it's just like this ridiculous thing.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. Obviously, he's in the new movie Beats on Netflix, in Transformers. Huge discography. Scary movie. He was in Me, Myself, and Irene. He was in Malibu's Most Wanted. He was one of the guys who kidnapped Jamie Kennedy in that. He was in Barbershop with Ice Cube. I'm just looking at the discography.
Wasn't he in Hustle and Flow too? You remember that movie?
I don't know. Yeah, I do. I didn't see that on here, but I'm scrolling pretty fast. Now I'm just looking for Friday.
Well, you know what it is? Like you have movies where you just remember random lines and they make no sense out of context. And I think there was like a scene in the movie. My brain is total cultural, you know, pig heaven today. But he said something about he was working with the singer and he goes, yo, I got a wife. She's good to me. She gets freaky deaky on my birthday, but she ain't gonna let me do this. And you know, I often will say that out in public, and people are like, "What's wrong with you? What's going on here?"
Oh my goodness, he's been in some good movies. I don't see Friday. He was in Hustle and Flow, so you're right on that. Barbershop. I don't see Friday on here, but that doesn't mean that this is complete. So, but dude's been in a lot of stuff. He's a great dad. One thing I loved in this article is it's talking about how he's got adult children now. So his son goes to his alma mater, which is Howard University, and he says, "For all my fuck ups, they came out all right. They're cool to hang with. That's the cool part of being a dad, hanging with my adult children." And I think that's just really cool to continue to have that relationship. Obviously, he's a busy dude. He's probably working a ton, but to be able to hang out with your kids, especially as they get older, I think is very, very, very cool thing to do.
Dude, yeah. And that, yeah, you know, it's funny. I think about that a lot. I'm sure you do too, where it's like you sit there and you wonder what are your kids going to be like, and what's going to be their experience of them growing up, and then what they're going to be like to actually when they've become fully formed people. And yeah, he said something. He's like, I spent most of my life, you know, you're just raising them and, you know, keeping them from not being dead. And then all of a sudden now it's like you get to experience that. So that's something I'm totally looking forward to and excited about.
So that brings us to numero, what is it, 4 that we're on now? Number 4 on this list from Fatherly. And it is not someone I would have picked on this list at all. But after reading like about this guy, and I've heard of him before, he's done some cool stuff. He was the first person to ever land a backflip on a motorcycle in competition. He's got a line of CBD products, and he's got an amazing tattoo business, like all kinds of stuff. And he's married to Pink.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's pretty cool in and of itself. He's got Willow, who's 8, and Jameson, who's 2. We're talking about Corey Hart. This was kind of a surprising one, wasn't it?
Yeah. And that's something I did like about this article on the whole is like some of the choices are like, yeah, obviously a no-brainer, but this was not a guy that I was expecting to see. And he's also a little bit controversial because he's notorious for doing some dangerous stuff with his kids. You know, he has his kids, he teaches them like how to shoot guns and ride motorcycles.
At 3 years old, it says. Yeah, I've been teaching my daughter to shoot guns since she was 3 years old. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I do think it's important. You know, we live in such a time where we protect our kids from everything. It's like, God forbid my kid walks down the stairs and doesn't hold on to like the railing. You know, I freak out. And then to put your kids in these situations. And it's interesting because he gets a lot of flack on social media for the things that he does. And we live in that society where people are kind of like armchair parenting. So on one hand, you know, I understand because I'd be scared to put my kid in those positions. But on the other hand, like you're teaching your kids to be kind of fearless. And that's how he is. And that's kind of how he's lived his life. And so it's definitely cool. Yeah. You know, the safest dad, I don't know about that, but he's definitely an interesting guy.
Yeah, he says, like, I'm not saying my way is right or wrong. I'm just replicating the way my father raised me. And that's a lot of being a dad, is taking some of the lessons that you've learned from your dad or father figures or mentors and just doing the best you can. And like, you know, this guy, again, he does backflips on motorcycles for a living. You wouldn't expect him to be the guy who says, hey, make sure you hold onto the handrail while you walk down 4 stairs, right? Like that's kind of incongruent with who he is. And I'm sure that he is a great dad, but he probably pushes the limits because he also knows the limits. Like he knows that we're capable of doing more, that if we fall, we can get back up, that even if we get injured, you know, you're in a cast for a couple days or a couple weeks and then you're back at it. So the cool thing is like, he's done it himself. So he's not saying, hey, kids, go out and do backflips on your motorcycle, not having ever done it. He's able to take kind of those experiences that shaped him and is able to say, you know what? This is what I did. These are the consequences. This is the opportunity. These are the risks. And so I think it's kind of, again, I'm not out there advocating that we go let our kids do backflips, you know, on motorcycles or shoot guns at 3 years old. But if you understand the limits and the boundaries, don't limit your children. Allow them to see that they can do anything. They can be anything. They can try things that were, you know, everything that is possible today was impossible at some time. And I think he has that ability to shut the fear part of his brain down. And if he can pass that on to his kids, I think it's powerful. Now, obviously within boundaries, right? Like, but I think it's just really cool to not limit your children and allow them to experience life and try things and see things for themselves with a little bit of a safety net, knowing that you're not just shooting guns at random places.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely, we always have to find what we're comfortable with. And like you said, as long as you do everything with a little safety net and there's some protection in there, you know, so be it. And these kids are going to be definitely badass because him and Pink are definitely, they're a little out there and they're really pushing the boundaries. And did you ever see the video of when Pink proposed to Corey Hart while he was in the middle of a bike race?
No, I didn't.
So he's in the middle of a bike race. They're going around the circles. Pink holds up a sign saying, "Will you marry me?" He saw, and I don't know if he crashed or like almost wiped out, but basically like she almost killed him because he got so distracted. Because when you're on the track, you got to be like really on the ball. It's like, if you look it up on YouTube, it's like one of the most ridiculous things ever. And she thought it was romantic. And he's like, yeah, I almost died right before we ever got married. So
wow.
It's a crazy story.
Madness. All right. We're getting into the top 3 from Fatherly. Number 3, he played for the Oklahoma City Thunder for a long time. This year, he's on the Houston Rockets, teaming up with his old buddy, James Harden. We're talking about the NBA's Mr. Fashion, Russell Westbrook. I think this is a really, really cool one. He has a son, Noah. It says a top 10 adorable NBA kid who will end up going in the first round if he has half his father's skills. I agree. I think there's something cool, not just about what what Russ is doing here, but in the NBA, there's a lot of young fathers, athletes who had children at a younger age, whether in high school, in college, or early in their pros. and they're bringing their kids along for the ride. We've seen Steph Curry bring his children up to his press conferences. Now you're seeing LeBron and Dwayne Wade's kids are on the same high school team. They're both out in California, and they're throwing alley-oops to each other just like their dads did. But, these guys are still kind of, I mean, LeBron's still, in his peak in the NBA. Dwayne Wade just retired, but they already have kids in high school. And I just think in the NBA, they have embraced their children and allowed them to be a part of their life, coming to the games and traveling with them. And obviously, passing down the sport. Michael Jordan's son played for UCF right by us, and now, has a really cool store down at Disney Springs called Trophy Room, where it's just a really cool shrine to his dad and what they're doing at Nike, and a lot of exclusives and stuff. And just, I think there's something special about the NBA and the players being present dads, as opposed to being, your traditional deadbeat dads, or your, dads from, lower middle class who kind of disappear. Or like, the NBA's done a very good job of this. And Russ obviously is one of the people leading the way.
I think what I like about guys like him and Steph Curry are, these are like insanely talented guys, right? Like it says here, there was a time when the idea of an NBA player averaging a triple-double was laughable, and he did it for 3 straight years. So you have these guys of like immense talent. They're super great at what they do, but they're still down to earth, and they're nice people. Now, there's no doubt, like you look at Steph Curry's kids, like those kids are spoiled. They're enjoying a good life, but there is a grounding in it, and it's just not just because I'm a famous athlete and I'm doing these great things. Like, you still are one of the most important things to me, and I would never let that slide. And I think that's really powerful, especially when you think about how demanding a season of basketball is, the time away, the training, the camps and everything. To be able to still kind of show up and be a great dad, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty awesome.
I completely agree. And now we're down to 2. The top 2 coolest dads, according to Fatherly, in this article. And I actually agree with number 2 and number 1. Number 2, I think he and his wife are the best couple ever on Instagram. If you follow them and their birthday Instagrams to each other and their pranks, and they are hilarious, and they do that with their kids as well. We're talking about Mr. Deadpool, Mr. Van Wilder, Ryan Reynolds. Hey, I'm a big fan of this guy. Like, Van Wilder, I've probably seen, it's probably up there in the top 2 or 3 movies I've seen like more times, like where I've watched it multiple times. Classic. Deadpool. Now he's in like Pikachu, so he's playing kind of the kid stuff. This dude's really cool. So, what do you think about him being at the top of the list, top 2 here?
Dude, Ryan Reynolds is my man crush for sure. Like he's really funny. He's just, his deadpan humor and his like confidence and bravado on screen. I remember him back from the Mighty Ducks. I don't know if it was 1 or 2 when he was first starting out. Like, he used to do that. I remember seeing, he had a TV show called Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. This is, this is a guy who just has charisma and is on stage. But what I really like about him is he's a good dude. Like, you can definitely see it. Like, he's very humble. He's very down to earth. Anytime anybody has an interview with him, or like, talks about something they love, like he sends like interviewers like Deadpool backpacks and Pikachu things. And he's just really committed to being a great person. And one of the things I really love is, in addition to him pranking his wife, is he has this kind of ongoing rivalry online with Hugh Jackman. I don't know if you ever watch that stuff, where they just rip on each other.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Oh my God. Like, just, I think because of like the whole Deadpool Wolverine thing, they're really good friends, and they're so ridiculous. This is a dude, like, if he wasn't famous, like, I'd want to hang out with. Like, I would want to have play dates, because I feel like he would be such just a great person. And I feel like his kids are probably down to earth. I don't think he kind of said, like, my kids didn't care about anything I did till I did Pikachu. And now all of a sudden he's like, he's the coolest dad ever. And, it's kind of similar with stuff like where, with my kid, it's like, oh, I did commercials with Mr. T, and, I did all these things and worked on New York Times bestsellers. But it's like, if I show him a comic book I wrote, or like a kid's book, like, suddenly then I'm cool. But, it just shows like how the mindset of kids are. But yeah, this dude's awesome.
Yeah, I think I think the humor that he brings to every situation it just lights you up. And I hope that he takes that same, not that he's, got the potty mouth and the R-rated stuff that he takes to the house, but just his fun-loving nature. I mean, if you've seen what he's done for like that gin company, Aviation Gin or whatever it's called, like, they're the most like it's the most lighthearted commercials and videos that you've seen. If you see what he did in the article they were talking about, is Pikachu just a PG rated version of Deadpool? And he's like, yeah, kinda, and just the humor and happiness he brings to life, to his ads, to his creativity. I hope he brings that home, and I think it's going to make for some great kids. So really, really good number 2 dad there. And that's going to bring us into dad numero 1, the coolest of the cool, according to Fatherly, the number 1 dad on the list, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
What that man's cooking.
I almost think it's kind of obvious.
This guy does everything. I mean, it's almost to the point, like, I get annoyed sometimes, but like, I'm like, this dude's everywhere and he's doing all this stuff. But then you watch him in the movies and you see how he shows up for his kids and his like mom and all the great things he does. And you're like, this dude deserves everything that he's got.
I'm amazed. So obviously, along with the rest of the planet, I follow him on Instagram, and it's incredible to see how he can be in like China doing a press tour on Sunday or Saturday, and then Sunday he's eating pancakes with his daughter, and then on Monday he's at the gym filming another movie in California. And it's just the ability to do all of those things, to juggle all of those things. And look, I'm not saying that, obviously a different lifestyle than you and I have with our kids. And, I'm home, 95% of the time. I do travel here and there for work. I know you do as well, but I'm here. So, but when he is there, it just seems like he's fully present, that he does the best that he can. And I mean, he is the epitome of like going after your dreams, making it happen, not letting anything slow you down, and being the hardest worker in the room. And I think being the hardest worker in the room applies to being the hardest worker at home, being the hardest worker as a dad, being the hardest worker now as a husband, being the hardest, like just everything that he stands for. I hope and I believe that he's instilling the best version of that into his kids. And I know it's not easy. Like I'm traveling again this weekend. I should be leaving Saturday morning, but I'm going to leave Saturday afternoon so I can see Colton's baseball game. I'm going to be on a plane Saturday as soon as the game's over, heading right to the airport. So I'm going to miss Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday. I'm doing a red eye Sunday night so I can be home Monday morning for like a parent teacher conference. And even that like is stressful and hard. Imagine being gone for 3 months to shoot a movie and coming home like one day every other week. But I think it's about making the most out of that time, showing people that you care, doing the things like FaceTime and things like that. But man, I love everything this guy stands for. And one can only hope that one day he will be the president of the United States, President Rock, and just take over the planet.
It's so easy though. Like I think about this, like it's easy for, say, like in a position like you, where a lot of your work is done, like you get a lot of clients, obviously through sales calls, but you guys do a lot of events and a lot of experiences and adventures and trips. And it's easy to go, well, I got to go away because this is how we make our living. This is how we do the things that we do. And it's a conscious decision to be present and to make that all work and kind of keep the balance going. So, and you see a lot of actors who are just like, fuck it, I'm just going to go out and do my thing and I'll make up for it later with my kids. But to actually be present with your kids and to make those conscious efforts, that takes work. And this guy, I don't know if he ever sleeps. I mean, it's like he's at the gym. I think at one point I saw an article that was like his workout, and he works out like on an off day, like 3 hours a day, if not like 6 or 7. And he's just, he's an amazing guy. And it's been amazing to watch his evolution. Like I remember when he first started in movies, he was in, it's like a movie called like Be Cool. It was like the sequel to Get Shorty with John Travolta.
Oh, John Travolta. I remember that. Yes.
And he was just this really quirky, funny guy. And then he just does all these crazy movies. And I got to say, a lot of his comedies are really funny. Like he did this one with Kevin Hart, where they were like CIA people, and like he's got
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, he's got chops in the Jumanji movie. I was like, he made me laugh. Like that dude makes me crack up, but he's also just, he's a good person. And so,
yeah, I mean, I was a huge in WWE, WWF, during that era of Rock, Stone Cold, like just the biggest Rock fan on the planet. I had Rock paraphernalia and stuff all over the place. My wife, Jen, so we'd started dating in high school, and I had like either the Layeth the Smacketh Down t-shirt or like one of the Rock funny and she just hated that I wore it all the time. And just to see how far he's come. And like you said, he did some of those movies like Be Cool and stuff like that. And then he did some really weird movies like The Tooth Fairy and, the one where he was the football player who had to take care of the daughter and, things like that. And he was trying to fit into a Hollywood mold. And it was as soon as he said, you know what, I just need to be myself. And as soon as he started being himself and being the tattoo wearing, the bald head, the big, trash talking Rock, who we all know and love, that's when his career just catapulted. And the relationship he has with the fans and talking to them, like the reason his movies do so well is because he has a relationship with millions and millions of Rock fans, through social media that want to support this guy. And it makes some of his movies that maybe wouldn't be blockbusters into blockbusters because of the fan support, because of how much these people really genuinely care about him. And they care about him because of how authentic he is, because of who he is, because of, the beliefs and the values and things that he instills. So number one on the list, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now it's time to turn our attention to you. So we have 2 questions for you as we leave you on this episode of Dad Chat. Number 1, would you let your kids go on a play date with Kanye's kids? And number 2, who is not on this list that should be? What dad should be on this top 8 of the coolest of the cool that Fatherly put out that is not on this list? Let us know. Tag us on Instagram, on Facebook, screenshot this episode, share it with other dads so they can learn some of the lessons, learn about some of the people that we talked about here, the good, the bad, the ugly. Why is Batman on this list? I don't know. But make sure that you tell us, would your kids go on that play date with Kanye's kids? And who is not on this list that should be? Matt, any last parting words before we depart episode number 9 of Dad Chat?
Dude, number 9. I love it. Yeah, here's the other question. What celeb would you want to have your kids have a play date with? Like who, regardless of them being famous, like if you just were like, oh, here's a cool dad that I would love my kids to be friends with their kids, who would that be and why as well?
Lots of good stuff for you guys to get involved in Dad Chat. This show is all about you, helping you to be a better dad who is doing everything that you want to do to take over the world or your world, still get home in time for dinner. Answer some questions, leave us some reviews, let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of Dad Chat.